All right, and we are live with Positive Influence here, and we're getting ready to get this thing started. I want to go ahead and let everybody know I appreciate y'all being on here to watch this thing. I know it's pre-recorded; y'all be watching this later on, so it's almost like I'm a time traveler at this point, which is pretty cool. I didn't even have to go 88 miles an hour, so I'm having fun with this. So we're going to get everything ready on my side over here and bring my guest up. We're going to have some fun talking to him about project and some other things that are going on as far as what drives the passion to get him to do what he's doing. So, speaking of guests, let's go ahead and bring him up on here. This is Jon Westhoff. Oh, you're muted.
Dope. You'd think I'd know how to do this after 13 years. Hey, thanks for having me. I'm Jon Westhoff. How are you?
You know what? It's great, though, because most everybody that comes on my shows has some kind of technical difficulty at one time or another. If you go through it perfectly, I think you've got like a voodoo doll on the side or something that you're working with. So we're good. I actually know that you're actually, not artificial intelligence, not anything like that. You're a human being, so we know you're okay. You passed the test.
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
Now, going forward on this, before we get into all the hijinks and shenanigans that usually happen on shows that I have, we're going to go ahead and find out who you are and where to find you and what you're working on type thing.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm Jon Westhoff. I'm the writer, letterer, publisher for Part-Time Comics, Comics with an X. You can find us on all social media by that name. Best place to find us is Linktree/Part-Time Comics. But yeah, I've been publishing independently for about 13 years. About 3 years ago, broke off on my own to do a Part-Time Comics. Now we're in our third full year starting. Current campaign, which we'll talk about in a minute, is going to be our 8th and 9th book that we've put out in the last 3 years. So
wow.
we're moving at a good clip.
No kidding. I mean, that's actually moving at a very good clip to have, in that short amount of time to still be consistent with that. And that brings, some questions that I wanted to ask you as well, going through with that as well. To kick this thing off, though, number one, had to have you on as a guest because Drumsticks of Doom. I'm sorry, but Demon Phil and Drumsticks of Doom just seems like that's like a story that goes along with some things that happen in my life at times. So if you've been kind of paying attention, I apologize for some things that you may have seen through the window, but yeah, we're good. I mean, that story is actually awesome. I love the way that's set up and the energy that's in there. Go ahead and let us know where you come up with the idea for Drumsticks of Doom.
Well, Drumsticks of Doom started probably 7 or 8 years ago. It was a much more slice of life story. Part of the reason I got into creating comics is because I played in bands for 10 or 15 years, had a family, winding down, living in a townhouse, not really wanting to bother the neighbors. The whole band thing kind of starts to go down. Well, what's my creative outlet now? And that was kind of where I found comics and comic writing. Before that, I never really had a desire to make comics. But, that itch is always kind of still there under the surface, what could have been, with the music part of it. So it started off as a story of that, somebody trying to make music and not really reaching their goals. And then I was like, well, nobody's going to read that. So I need werewolves. I need wizards. I need that kind of stuff, So I'm like, all right, we're going to take some Manowar lyrics, like literally take the lore from like Ronnie James Dio songs and Manowar and put it into this comic. And that was when I came up with the idea of what if Black Sabbath, not the Beatles, became the most popular band in the world, and thus the universe was changed forever. And that's kind of the higher concept. But it follows Lana, who is a indie songwriter in a heavy metal world, and she's thrust into a battle to keep heavy metal on the top of the charts when all she wants to do is make her music. So,
and I got to tell you, I mean, from my standpoint, being I'm a little bit older, so I've gone through the times with the music and stuff like that. So I mean, it really hit hard whenever I read this. I was feeling, like you said, the lyrics and the music and the way that the energy comes from the different groups that are on there. And the fact that you said that, what if Black Sabbath were to be the number one band instead of the Beatles, that right there just explains so much of what you need to know about this book here and the series. We're not going to give away spoilers by any means, but that right there should be enough to go ahead and have you sit there going, wait a minute, did he just say that out loud? Is that actually possible? It is possible. I'm telling you right now, it is a very fun read from what I've seen so far on this. And it's something that I can definitely see where it has a world building setup on there. It's not something that can be just a, 1 off, 2 off, 3 off scenario. I don't know how many years you're planning on writing of this thing, but it can go for a while as far as I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. This first arc is planned to be 4 issues so that, we can see where it is. It's really planned to be about 3 arcs, maybe 9 to 10 issues. We'll see. There's, of course, more stories in a cool world like this that you could tell, but the main story, we'd like it to be about 9 to 10 issues, and we'll see. We got to get through issue 3 here first, and then hopefully issue 4, the first trade. I think it's a big step for us, and then we'll see where the series is.
Exactly. And just to let everyone know, to remind you, of course, this is the link for the campaign that's going on. Now, you don't have to be a speed reader. You don't have to, bring out your flash photography and take a picture of this right now. I've actually got the links embedded in the feeds to make it very, very simple for you to go click on that and see. But all we ask is wait until the end of the show so you get all the information in there and you're ready to do this. I just want to let everybody know it's right there. It's easy to get to. So I just want to go ahead and bring that up right now so that you have access to this campaign. Now, we've already talked about Drumsticks of Doom being on here, and we're going to delve a little more into that as we go along. But, of course, there's another book that's on here that's available, which is Depowered. And that one is a very interesting altered twist to what you've got. I mean, it's like a night and day of, the different books you've got on there. With Depowered, what made you come up with that particular story on that?
Well, Depowered is yet another one which I sat on for a while. I kind of got a little bit burnt out, took a couple years off of writing and kind of got the itch again. Figured, I'm getting older. I better do this before, the Crypt Keeper comes for me. But Depowered really started as, it was really a story about ex-athlete Bo Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had a major injury and, he was one of the biggest athletes in the world, one of the most successful, 2 sports. He used to come into the Best Buy where my friends worked. And I remember him coming in and he had gained a lot of weight and, just kind of, you start to kind of create a story in your mind of like, what's his life like? And he's probably miserable because he's not in sports. That's probably not true, of course.
Right.
But I remember thinking that and being like, what's that like for somebody who's on top of the world? And then that's all taken away from them, when that's what they built for. I actually read his autobiography, which actually came out before his injury. So it's interesting to read, at the end of the book, like he's talking about how great his career is going to be. And
right.
I'd be interested to see, if he did an addendum after that. But so that's kind of how it started. And I was like, well, just like Drumsticks of Doom, no one's going to read this kind of slice of life, book about an ex-athlete. I also had the superhero story about somebody who didn't really have good superpowers. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, wait, they're the same story. And then I mashed them together and figured out a way that they work. So it's really about, maybe both books are about, you reach a point in your life and maybe you're not where you thought you would be. And you have to fight with your own expectations and how that kind of affects you as a person. So a group of superheroes got powers about 20 years ago. 10 years ago, they lost them. And then for Dax, this is what's left. He wasn't a very good superhero and he's not a very good person. So he doesn't have really much to build on afterwards. And when he's trying to sell his tell-all book at the local superhero convention, he's accosted in his hotel room, something stolen from him, and that kind of thrusts us into the story.
Exactly. And you really hit the nail on the head whenever you were talking about, what if things didn't go differently in your life, if things changed up on there, how much would it alter, how people perceive you and what you're able to do and everything. And then, of course, you threw in the superhero, genre on top of that. And so now it's like, I don't know. I really felt one of your pages on there, especially because I'm getting up to that age to where, dropping a credit card on the ground and going to get it and your knee gives out and you fall on the ground and you're like, oh, this sucks. What the hell just happened to me? It seems like yesterday I was able to, run a mile or whatever. Yeah. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm invested in this now. I want to see what happens with this and where this is going. And again, not giving any spoilers on this, but you also said that, he's not a very good guy and things like that as well. That actually plays a lot into what happens and why it happens to him moving through from what I've seen so far with Depowered 1 on here. It's a very fun read and it gives you a different look. There's been so many superhero stories that are out there. Everybody can agree to that. There's been so many different ways and they just kind of change the color of the costumes, change a few abilities, and they're usually abilities that make it where you can't say no to it at all. The abilities that you give to your character in here is kind of like, wow, was there a bet lost or something? I mean, how did this work exactly? And it gives it that fun factor on there as well. It's not as dark as The Boys. I'm throwing that out there right now, but it still has a more of a dark, nature to it. It's definitely not a Superman, Spider-Man, something like that. It doesn't have the whole, eat your vegetables and you'll grow up to be a good person scenario.
No, I think that's a good tagline. I'll put it on the back of the book. It's definitely not. It is a little bit more adult. I would rank Drumsticks of Doom is more of a PG-13 book. This one's a little bit, it's more adult themed, you know, and you're dealing
Right.
with adult issues and aging, and again, getting to a point in your life where you feel like you haven't accomplished what you wanted to, and you're kind of one of those people who, you know, maybe peaked in high school kind of attitude, and you know, how does that affect you going forward? Well, one of my favorite books growing up, and what kind of changed how I saw superheroes, because I never really, again, saw myself writing, and definitely didn't see myself really writing superhero books. You can probably see them in the background here. It was The
Hmm.
Max from Sam Keith.
Yes.
And just, I love books where it's like they're a superhero, but they're not. So that was part of how, again, that superhero side of the story started. I wanted to tell it about this kind of reluctant superhero, or this kind of not so, you know, this superhero with semi superpowers, and a lot of that was inspired by, you know, Sam Keith's The Max, and just how much that hit me in my teenage years, and how that made me feel, oh, comics can be so different, you know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the Max is so underrated. It didn't get near the love that it should have gotten going through the years. It kind of hit a wall and stopped, and nobody ever picked it back up. And I'm very surprised nobody's picked it back up. But like you said, it gives you that idea to go, well, if they could do this and do it with this character that had like no inclination of being the good guy in here,
Mm-hmm.
then what could I do with mine, you know, moving forward? What could I do with my IP that I want to work with on this? And I love that that's in there, because that brings up the next thing I want to talk about. And I bring it up on most all of my shows because I love bringing this part of it about up on here, is the passion that you put in here really shows, especially in the indies, more so than it does anywhere else, because you throw everything you've got into your work to make sure that it goes out to as many people as possible, to make sure that you can keep doing what you're doing. So the question that I've got with that is, in dealing with the passion that you're putting into this and everything, is there a certain way that you center yourself to get ready to go ahead and write these out, to create these and everything? Is there a certain movies you watch, music that you listen to? You know, do you have audiobooks on file? What do you do to actually get centered on to get ready for these?
Well, it's probably going to be a big surprise to you, but I'm a big heavy metal fan. Um, so I actually mostly, and I was lettering, you know, just as we got on the air here, I usually listen to letter. It gets me, you know, kind of motivated to do kind of the mundane, repetitive task. When I write, not so much, but I do love uh, dramas like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and those things, you
Mm-hmm.
know, kind of really inspire me. Those really deep, emotional, you know. Again, I try to put some of the fantastical elements in there so that people will, you know, have it won't just be talking heads back and forth. I'm not Jaime Hernandez. I certainly understand that, you know, a very emotional book, you know, takes a special, you know, creative team. So I do try to add some of the excitement to it, but I really do like, you know, shows and movies like that, you know, something like The Road or something where it's just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, these heavy emotional movies. Those are the ones that I really like. I also, you know, I'm a huge fan of, you know, cartoons, and you know, my favorite movie all time is Wreck-It Ralph. So I do try to find the balance between, you know, the heavy emotional bringing you down, and kind of the lighthearted, you know.
Yeah, and Wreck-It Ralph's a good one, because I personally enjoyed that one simply because it had everything involved in it. It was like it took my entire childhood, everything I grew up with, and threw it into every movie that was, you know, that was involved in with it, whether it be just a cameo or some, you know, bigger appearance in there. But if you watch it enough times, you go back and rewatch it, you can actually see a lot of things in there. And I love that it has that feel in there, because it kind of gives you that bring you back to your basics scenario is what I like about it. It's almost like you sit there watching that and it makes you feel as if you can go back and redo your life and come back to where you want to now. And even whenever you're writing, and maybe that's why you like, you know, watching that and everything too, is because you can come back and you can go, okay, I wrote this yesterday and now I've watched this and I'm looking at this now and I'm like, yeah, I could change this up, I could change that up, and it'll look a little bit better and look a little bit better this way. It changes your perspective.
I
And
think that's a good way of
perspective is
looking at it.
well, I mean, perspective is a huge thing because people look at different things different ways. And that's one thing I want to bring up about, we're going to talk about Drumsticks of Doom on this one, because on your perspective on this one, of course, you've already said you've got the heavy metal, you know, background on this. So you definitely see that right off the bat. It does have horror elements to it. It's very subtle on the horror elements are presented, shall we say, unless you open the book. Like if you don't have the book open at the time, you look at it, you're like, okay, Drumsticks of Doom, what is this exactly? How is this? Because I even did the same thing. I was like, okay, how is this going to be that just from what I'm seeing on the cover? I'm going to give you props on that one, because covers can be misleading at times. They can give you the wrong information, then you open it up and you're like, that had nothing to do with it. Or they can give you the information like you're doing, where it's like, I'm interested and I want to see what's going on. You open it up and you're like, okay, now I'm invested. How is it that you actually change that perspective to where you incorporate so many different marketed people that are out there? I mean, you don't go to one particular market group that's available. You've actually opened this thing up to several ones that are available just by doing things a little bit different. How do you change that perspective on that?
Well, I'd love to take a lot of credit for that. I think a lot of it was just, what's the kind of book I want to see in the world. I love music themed comics. Dan and I, my co-creator on this, Dan Doherty, amazing artist, he and I worked together on a comic. I realized that I had a lot of people in the industry that were peers that also were in bands or made music at some point. And I said, well, let's make a music themed anthology together. And one of my friends, Wendy Freeman, she recruited Dan. She knew Dan, and he made this amazing story in Banthology 1, which was about him playing on stage and for a large crowd and getting that feeling. The title of the story was Beast in Me. Mm-hmm. And you just can never shake that. The beast is always with you. You're always chasing that dragon, so to speak. And I never really had huge shows or anything like that, but I really could relate to that. And again, I think anybody who's in a band or even is created and had some success has that feeling inside. And I was just so inspired by Dan, and his art is, world class. So that helps too. So I knew I wanted to work with someone like him on a story. They had to have the background in music. They had to know that, not just to draw it technically, which helps, mm-hmm. but to know what it's like. And you see it on his pages, when he has the musicians playing, there's just so much emotion to it. But as far as like the internals and the logo and stuff like that, that was just like, hey, what's some cool stuff like I want to see? Like, oh, who's this cool artist? I give very little direction. I kind of gave her an idea. This is an homage to a heavy metal album. It's King of Kings by Manowar, people are wondering, with the Maria Wolf cover. Mm-hmm. And I really just gave her very little direction. Here's some of Dan's internal pages. This is what we want to include in there.
Yes.
And this is kind of the outline. I said, you don't have to do this. You can do your own thing. You're an amazing artist. If you just want to do an amazing wolf, or whatever, kind of pull people in. And if I could take credit for anything, it's that I am very fortunate with the artists I work with. I have an eye for artists, especially cover artists, that can really draw you in to the book. So I've been very fortunate. I would love to say that was it. All this was by design, but a lot of it just fell into place where it needed to, and it worked with the right people at the right time.
Absolutely. And you already hit, it was like at the exact same moment whenever you mentioned about drawing the wolf and stuff like that, because I've got the artwork that we're showing up behind us right now. Mm-hmm. And this actually shows, just from this one page, you can see that you got the horror element, locked in there for sure with the werewolves, but then you've got the metal that's involved in that, because you've got the werewolves that are ready to play some metal. It's like, okay, where is this going? I don't know where it's going, but I'm here. Put my seatbelt on. Let's get ready for this bad boy. Arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times.
If I had known, 7 or 8 years ago when I was kind of coming up with the idea and pitched, talked to with some other friends, if I had known it was going to be such an easy sell, I would have started it a long time ago, because I did not anticipate how many people were just as hungry as I am for books about heavy metal. I just really give that short pitch about Black Sabbath and the Beatles, or somebody walks up in an Iron Maiden t-shirt and I'm like, hey, you like heavy metal? I got a heavy metal comic for you. They see the covers, they go, oh my God, I'm in. So I've really just been so just blown away by the people's response and how easy it is to sell. And again, I wish that was by design, but I really just was like, I want to make a book about what if Manowar lyrics were real and the world was, as heavy metal could be. And because that's kind of what I know. They say write about what you know. So I've been into this stuff for a while.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And kind of showing some of the artists we're talking about this too, because you mentioned about it's got that feel of the heavy metal, with the cover art and all. I mean, if you look at this, for the Drumsticks of Doom especially, that looks like album art. That looks almost like I'm getting catfished here. I'm like, that's not a comic, that's album art. I know the difference. And that is awesome that you're able to put that on there and still get the feel that's attached to the entire book as well. Because again, to bust that myth for everybody that's watching this thing, if you get a book in and it looks ooh-ah on the cover and you love the covers and everything, you actually crack those things open. You know what? There's more art, and there's even some words in there that create a story that creates an entire universe. it's great. I'm busting that whole myth that they're just the cover. There's actually more inside there, so keep that in mind. But there is so much. I mean, it is just absolutely gorgeous, the stuff that you came up with on here and the way that it looks. Now, of course, with again, Drumsticks of Doom showing the metal cover, it's on there. Depowered shows more of the cartoonish style that's on there. That almost, if I'm not mistaken, is that a
Sorry about that. I think
there
my
you go.
internet hiccuped.
That's okay. It happens. No, but I was wondering if on the Depowered, is that a homage to the Tick, or what exactly is that with that one there?
Hercules.
Okay, Hercules. Okay.
That's my favorite Marvel character. But I was asking Chris, what he wanted to draw, and I was kind of like, hey, what about like a Herculean, And he was like, yeah, I'll do that. and that's part of what I've definitely learned over the years. You see Dan Doherty's amazing cover from Drumsticks of Doom. Again, that's another homage to a cover. But I asked Dan, again, give not tons of direction, but I want to present them with something they're going to enjoy, that's going to play to their strengths. So I do feel like I try to foster that environment, even the internal pages. I don't want to do, if an artist like Chris was going to do internals, I wouldn't necessarily want to do a The Boys story or something like that. Not that you couldn't. You
Right.
can do whatever you want in comics. But
Right.
I want to play to his strengths. If he's about high action and fun and he's got, really cartoony, rubbery characters, then I want to do something, like that. Let's do, something along those lines. So I try to play to the artist's strengths, but really leave it open for them too. I do full scripts for most of my writing, but it's always open to them. If a panel doesn't work, or you feel like my direction is not there, do what you need to do.
And I enjoy that, and especially, and this is going to be talking about Depowered on this one, because whenever I was going through this one, the coolest thing is I'm going along and I'm getting invested in the story. The artwork's got me gripped and everything, and I'm going through page by page. And of course, I'm doing it digital, but I'm scrolling right on through this thing. And then I get to a page and I'm like, did I miss something? Is this out of place? Does this not fit in here or something? It's almost like a commercial break. You put like a 1 or 2 page thing in there of different art, different little story that's in there, and then it goes right back to the story afterwards. And I'm like, okay, this is awesome. I love how this is set up.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that. I haven't talked to many people about Depowered, and that was kind of by necessity. Our original artist and my co-creator, Bob Gartner-Nellis, longtime collaborator, he was not able to schedule-wise continue the book, and I was like, you know what? We kind of need like a flashback off scene to kind of buffer this as we switch art styles here.
Yep.
And also, to add some fun and background to the universe, Dax has kind of a flashback dream sequence about a cartoon that was starring one of the characters on the screen right now. So I was like, oh, that's a good spot to kind of work that in. Again, playing to the strengths. I've known artist Matt Nixon for about a decade. He does amazing anime, rounded characters. So let's have him draw a cartoon within the world. But yeah, I wasn't sure how that worked. Some people told me that was confusing. They thought maybe it was an advertisement or something. And I was like, oh, I tried to put the cues in there, but you never know if people are going to pick up on that, without making it obvious. This is the scene within. I don't know how I could have labeled it.
Well, the cool thing for me is it was actually it created to where I had to go back and reread a little bit to see if I had lost something, and just to make sure. But then it created a different perspective. We were talking about that just a while ago on the perspective, and it really changed it up. And then all of a sudden I go into this new artwork and this new flashback with, you could tell it was differently done. And it was like, okay, I like where this is going. And then all of a sudden after 2 pages, it's done. And you go back into the story and it's like, okay, what just happened? That was cool. I want to do it again. It's like jumping on a ride and, you got your hands up going, yes. And then the ride's over with. You're like, oh, do it again. Do it again.
No, I appreciate you saying that. And sometimes, comics are tough. Schedules change. These comics take a long time to make. These artists take a long time. So sometimes you have to make changes on the fly to make the book work. So it's nice to hear that, that was not the plan going in. But you know what? Sometimes that's the fun of comics, is that you can change it. You can't necessarily do that halfway filming a movie.
Exactly.
You can do that in comics,
Well, and the cool thing is, like you just said, you took an obstacle and you created a plus out of it. You took something that, was like, oh man, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to set this up? And you were like, oh, let's just try, throw it in here and try this way and see what happens. And it worked. Sometimes you have to throw some things against the wall and see what sticks. There's just some ideas that have not been put out there by every single person that's out there. And that's whenever you want to think outside the box to make sure that you stay outside the box so that you're more, relevant at that point.
And I try to stay in that zone with comics too. I try not to change the script too much and stress my artist. But even as Dan started issue 1, that story grew just by looking at his art. He inspired me. Depowered, there's a pinup in the back by longtime collaborator John Bourne, good friend of mine. And he just did such a great job with this villain character that I just said, oh, do a pinup. It'll be funny because we mentioned him in the book. And then I was like, holy crap, you need to be in the next book, please. Do you have time in your schedule? Because now you need to do this Remember flashback in the story. And it was great. He was able to do that. So that is an issue 2. Hopefully people will check it out.
Oh, that's okay. That's already got me interested because I want to, I want to get on that ride again. So there you go. I'm already invested. It's really simple. But you've got 2 really fun books that are very different in your stories and everything. How do you go ahead and keep them separated? Like if you're thinking about something, I talk to these creators all the time that come in here, and if they have one IP, it's easy to have a conversation and say, okay, what are you doing to keep this, story going and everything? When you have multiple IPs, and especially whenever they are not similar in any way whatsoever, how do you get your mindset differently on that? How do you sit down and go, okay, today, Drumsticks of Doom, a few hours later or the next day or whatever, okay, this is going to be depowered. How do you actually set your mind that way?
Well, I'm big on like outlining scripts long in advance. I jot down, I have long laundry list of like ideas and then move the ideas into shortened scripts. So that helps, but it is sometimes difficult. You have to kind of catch yourself and make sure the characters aren't too similar, especially in the sound of their voice and things like that. So sometimes it's about, sitting with that script for longer rather than switching back and forth. But again, I think I've kind of been doing it long enough to where, I can pull up the Google Doc while I'm sitting in bed at night watching TV and I can, I just thought of an idea, put that in the script, change stuff. I don't know if I've kind of developed a attention deficit in my old age, but I'm pretty good at jumping back and forth when an idea hits me. If I get out of the shower and I'm like, oh, I got to write that down right away, or I got to run down the computer. Sometimes that just works. And then you go back afterwards and then you freshen it up and say, okay, let's actually make it work and not just a series of a madman's ideas, scrolled down in Google Docs.
You never know. Sometimes that might work. I mean, you could always have a, little anthology you'll put together and just have all these ideas thrown in there. And again, if it throws against the wall and it sticks, it sticks. I mean, people are looking for something different. They're tired of the cookie cutter stuff. There's been so much Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all this stuff, and they just keep beating that horse into the ground as much as they can, changing the suit every once in a while, changing the powers. I mean, take The Boys, for instance. I mean, their main character in there has actually got a suit that's very similar to Superman, but they did it on purpose because they're making fun of him on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you watch the show, you understand that. People have actually looked at the posters that I've talked to that have not seen the show, and they're like, oh, it's just another superhero show. And I'm like, oh, no. It's much, much different.
Just a little different. Give it a try. But yeah,
exactly.
And that was my reluctancy with even doing a superhero book. And I'll be honest, I think that's part of been the struggle of Depowered, because even though it says Depowered, it's not as easy of a pitch as Drumsticks of Doom. And I did not anticipate that. We had some early success in 2021. We had 2 successful Kickstarters. And, I was riding high. I was like, all right, Depowered, it's time to launch our first mini series. And, this is going to be easy. We're building, and I had a 10-year career before that I could build on. And it did not go well. So much so that I relaunched it on another platform and it still didn't go well. And then I did a pre-order through my site and it went okay, but weren't where we needed to be. That's why it's taken almost a year for the issue 2 to come out. So it is difficult. I was hesitant to do a superhero book just because I know how that goes in the indie world in general. And it has proven to be a difficult sell to people. But I'm confident once we get through this 3-issue arc and the trade is out, I think, I'm confident enough in the story that Ronaldo and Bob and John and Matt and I have kind of built in this book that it'll find its audience.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you talking about the difficulties and everything actually brings up the next question that I want to talk about is what's probably the biggest difficulty that you've encountered in your career in dealing with comics and everything that you've been able to look back on going, I learned from it and I know how to make it better on the next one. What's something that really stood out to you that way?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it has to go back to Well, I guess it was even before that, but really this depowered failure has really, I mean, I've even put some of that into the book. You know what? Let's put it into the character and his struggles. But now that I think about it, we had some early failures with the previous company I was with, King Bone Press, with my longtime collaborator Bob Ornelas. We had a couple failed Kickstarters as well. We felt like we were building an audience. We tried to do like I'm doing now, where we did multiple books at once, and it didn't work out. And we kind of weren't on the same page after that, and how we were going to relaunch. Bob was not as excited about doing multiple Kickstarters a year, which you see I'm doing now. And I never felt like we really recovered from that. I never felt like we got the momentum going again. We had some success after that, and we put several books out. But when we really tried to give that big push and felt like we had the audience to do a multi-book campaign, and it didn't work out, we still have books now that never came out based on that. They're out there, and they were on Comixology and stuff, but that was a really big disappointment. So I think that helped prepare me. Again, I don't know if I handled the depowered failure the best. I probably should have just licked my wounds and relaunched on Kickstarter at a lower goal. I didn't do that. I went to Indiegogo. It didn't work out. Then I went to the pre-sale, and it kind of really delayed things. Luckily, the creative team has been with me the whole way, and they're still like, everybody got paid, so that was no big deal. So I'll recoup the money later. But yeah, it helped me say, failure is not the end. You can recover. You'll figure this out. And fortunately, I'm in a situation where I can do that. Right? This isn't my primary income. Part-time comics is not just a clever name. It's I do it on the side. So I'm in a very privileged position that I can do that.
And that's good that you're able to do that and look at it in that way. And yes, platforms do play a huge part in what your audience is looking like, what your market value is going to look like out there, and everything. How many eyes it's going to fall on, because the platforms have to be large enough and have a big enough following to have enough people on there for that, of course. So you reaching out and going to different platforms, that's basic human nature. You're like, well, if this didn't work, I'm going to try this. Well, if this didn't work, I'm going to try this. It's deductive reasoning at that point, and you have to try it at least to figure it out. The best part is, though, that you learn from it, and you learned, okay, this is what I'm going to do different next time. So it's not like you looked at it going, it's a failure, I'm never going to touch this again. You're like, nope, I can do it better next time. You went the whole Bionic Man experience. You're like, we can do better. We have the technology.
Yeah, the technology. And that's part of why I'm doing 2 books. It's not always easy to do 2 books at once and pitch them. I mean, you've mentioned a few times they're kind of different in ways. But I also, we've done, what is this? Our fifth Kickstarter, I think. And we did a multi-book campaign last year as well. And we've seen, I have some repeat backers. I have some great loyal friends, fans, a family that have backed us. So I know I'm going to get, a couple dozen of those people. Why not offer them the books at the same time? Can ship them at the same time. They're both going to be complete at the same time. And then we'll see if hopefully, maybe a few of those Drumsticks fans, which has had good success, start picking up Depowered, which they have through other campaigns. Mm-hmm. So why not? You know what? I think we have enough crossover right now where both books can be success. And then, I think Drumsticks can help the harder to pitch Depowered maybe find an audience too. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Depowered it's not that it's as difficult to pitch. It's just something that, like we've talked about throughout this, it's got more of a cookie cutter name attached to it. It's not the story by any means. I'm telling everybody that's watching this right now, if you think this is going to be your standard superhero book, it is not. And the fact that it has a superhero genre attached to it is a double-edged sword. It's a good thing to get the name out there. It's a bad thing because people think automatically, oh, well, it's another one. And it's not. I mean, it actually breaks that entire thing completely. It doesn't fall into that category, in my opinion, at least, reading through this. And I'm fairly critical whenever I read these, simply because I don't want to sit up here and say that it's a good thing to anybody, because I like, having a little bit of a reputation at sometimes. And I like to be able to tell people what I do like, simply based on what I think other people may enjoy as well. So with yours, I can honestly say it is such a different story on there, and it has a good storyline to it. The art, pulls you through and everything on there, but it's the way that it's a very different superpower book. That's what got me, is it's not your cookie cutter style. The last time I had this kind of opinion about a superhero story was whenever The Boys
Hmm.
And I'm telling you right now, it's simply because they went completely out of the box. You're doing the same thing over here. And I'm looking at it going, wait a minute, this has got some serious potential over here. People need to pay attention to what's going on because this
Thank
could
you.
definitely grow much more.
Thank you.
Now, what are you looking at as far as with Depowered? Is it going to be something that you're going to run for at least, a certain arc on there? Or are you looking at going as far as you possibly can with people, dependent upon the following on there? What are you looking at?
Well, it's right now it's planned as a 3-issue miniseries. There is more story to be told in that universe if we get a big following going for it. But this initial arc, I think wraps itself up nice, and then we can see if that's all it is, then that's great. It'll be a nice self-contained, our version of superhero book. So right now, this is the middle of the arc, right? Just one issue to go after this. We'll hopefully do the trade this summer or fall, and then have the complete story out there and see how people react.
Awesome. And as of the recording of this right now, you are, I want to say you're 80% on the funding goal, correct?
Yeah, we are actually at 71%.
71%.
We
Okay.
got about 2 weeks left, and that's kind of been the trajectory, especially this past year or so. We have a good first and second day, and then it's kind of a slow step to the top. So we're confident we can get there. This is the biggest goal I've ever set initially. I struggled with that. How much do I want to reach as far as minimum funding? But
Mhm.
knowing it's 2 books,
Right.
I really need to get there, get everybody paid on time, and all that stuff. So this is
Exactly.
the biggest goal. So we knew it wouldn't be easy, but yeah, it's been great to see people's response so far, and a lot of backers coming back. That's always a good feeling.
Now, have you found where, with you doing the two book setup on this one, because I know you did multiple last year as well, but with this particular one here, have you found that whenever you're promoting this and marketing this out there, are you actually going to different groups? Or are you kind of like spot putting this into certain groups together so that they can go ahead and see that, both of these are available? Or are you just really pinpointing one or the other? How are you going about doing that?
In general, I am trying to pitch them together. I don't want to say, even though I can acknowledge Drumsticks has had more initial success, these books are still very important to me. So I'm pitching them, on shows like yours. I want to talk about them equally, but
Mhm.
I also understand that there's going to be target audiences. So I am in, several music and heavy metal theme groups, and there's been a couple, superhero theme groups I've been into on Facebook, or look for tags on Instagram or on Twitter and stuff like that. So I do try to cherry pick those and say, hey, this might be something you're interested in, just because I know, um, if you're approaching a certain audience that's looking for something with something they're not, they might lose interest quickly. So I have done a little bit of the pitch one at a time.
I mean, that's the way to go. Is you never know. You might have somebody that's in the heavy metal stuff that looks at it going, wait a minute, that looks like a different kind of superhero book. Let me check into this one. If you don't offer it, though, they'll never know about it. They'll be a huge follower of your one, and they may or may not catch it, in the campaign while it's over there because they'll be so, you know, keen and like blindsided, on I want only this one book. This is what I came in here for.
Hmm.
So you have to be careful that you don't blindside them so much onto just one thing. You have to give them the option, for something else on there. So that's good that you're doing that because you never know. I mean, 23 years of retail management on my end, the biggest thing that I learned over there is that for every 100 people that walk through that door, you're only going to make up to 10 sales, and that's up to 10 sales. So everybody was standing there and they're like, well, at least I get 10 sales a day. And it's like, yeah, but we're commissioned. I don't want 10 sales a day. I want more. I want 500 people walking through that door so I can get 50.
Right.
You got to up the math on there, and that's what you look at doing. And I can see where you're able to do that by having different genres available and being able to promote and push on that way as well. How does it work out for you whenever you go to cons? I mean, whenever you have people come up to the tables and things, do you see that they're actually interested in some of the other stuff instead of what they initially walked up to, or are they kind of just going straight to one thing?
Well, I'll be honest. In the first few years that I've been doing this again, when I was with Kingbone Press, we published a lot of our peers' books, and I think the table was very diverse, so it was very difficult to hone in. I'll be honest. Drumsticks is the easiest sell at the table. It's the hottest item. That the covers are very eye catching and all that. Um, it can be difficult to pull people away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not the hugest con goer, to be honest with you. We haven't historically done too well at conventions. I think once we get some of these books in trades, and I have those higher ticket items, I think that will help. supplement some of that cost. But in the few that I've done in the years, post COVID and all that, Drumsticks of Doom is it's an easy sell. It's eye catching. Sometimes it's about how you present your table. I try to present the books equally, but that one's just, it really brings people in. So then sometimes you can get them and say, hey, I also have this book, or our first book was with the previously mentioned Bob Ornelas. Child Possession Services is another series we have going. And that's kind of an easy one to tack on. It's about a spooky social worker who helps, children who are possessed or were possessed. You can kind of pull them in with that one. But yeah, it's been harder than I thought. And then we have some weird books, like we did a tribute to The Simpsons. We did a tribute to Magic the Gathering. And those are even harder too, because now you're really pulling people out and they're like, yeah, sometimes you'll get people just to walk up for that though. So it's good. I think it's still good to have a diverse table. But yeah, it's been very interesting to see how honed in people get on the one book.
Now, I got to ask, because, Drumsticks of Doom, it just automatically comes into my mind. Is there going to be some point where we're going to see possible, some signed drumsticks that might be available, as a tier in the future or something along those lines? Because
we have one right here.
There we go.
If people ask me all the time, and one of the add-on items is a guitar pick, which, Drumsticks of Doom. Why are you doing a guitar pick? Well, I'll tell you why. Because drumsticks are huge and they're a pain in the ass to ship, and they're very expensive. But I am working on it. I was actually trying to do on these very drumsticks that I recorded the intro video for the campaign. I was trying to do some sort of, I don't know, stencil on there with the logo or something. I'm trying to think of something, because obviously I cannot go to the end of this campaign without at least offering that once, at least giving it a try. Try to figure it out.
Exactly.
Tape them inside a huge box or whatever. We'll figure it out. I promise by the end, at least we'll offer one set of drumsticks.
That would
but
be
we do have the guitar picks, which are cool. Now,
I will say that you're going to have to put a disclaimer on those drumsticks that if they conjure up anything, that's on them. You're not liable for anything.
I do. You're right. Now, thank you for the legal advice. I need to include
exactly. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, sorry, but you got to read the book. It's just
right. Or if the sticks don't glow for you and shoot magic lightning bolts, I mean, you don't have the power. I'm sorry, you weren't the chosen one.
There you go. And again, if you don't know, then you need to get on there and know. It needs to happen. And speaking of needing to happen, I'm about to give you full screen on this one so that you can let everybody know why they need to get over there to Drumsticks of Doom and Depowered. There's two of them over there, guys. Two of them. There's Drumsticks of Doom and Depowered that's available over there. So there's something for everybody. But if you want to go over there and pick them up all, there's packages for that too and everything. But I'm going to give John full screen on this one. He's going to let you know why you need to get over there and go ahead and support any way you possibly can right now.
Yeah, so you see that here's the first issues of our two mini-series. Again, I'm a longtime creator and did a lot of anthologies and one-shots and things like that, but it's so exciting to be in the middle of two series at the same time, so that's part of why we're presenting them at once. This year, if we can get through this campaign, it's really important. Again, we understand not everybody can afford to back. Times are tough for a lot of people. If you can share it, social media has been very tough. The shares really help, because if we can get through this campaign successfully, it really sets us up very well, again, to get both of these books to trade paperbacks, to see their first arcs get through. This is just a critical point for us. So this campaign is hugely important. We've had so much success early on, so that's why it's really important. If there's ever a campaign, anybody who's watching who I know, that if you feel like I'm calling in favors from everybody, because this one is really the critical one where if this can be successful, then both series will continue on and finish their arcs, and then they could be even more from there. We have all of our books available on there. I mentioned the previously mentioned Child Possession Services. We have a Simpsons tribute anthology, 2 tributes to Magic the Gathering, all my old books from Kingbone Press. Most of them are still available in imprint. So you can get a lot of different stories in there. We have tons of discount tiers on there as well, so you can get great prices. Amazing variant cover artists, even actual real metal covers, because I couldn't have a heavy metal comic book without heavy metal covers. So we have the Maria Wolf and Kelly Williams from issue 2 covers in real actual metal, and they're really cool. So
that is awesome.
Check it out.
That's why y'all need to get over there and do it. But I definitely want to go ahead and add on to what you said on there, because you actually hit it square on the head with this one, is the shares. Every show, I always push a couple of hashtags up here. Number one is hashtag power of the finger, the correct one, if you can. But hit that share button and get these shares going. It is more important than you know to get it in front of as many eyes as possible, yes. But in the event you are financially able to go ahead and back this and everything, hit that share button after you've backed it, and it actually hits that algorithm a lot harder than you think it does for these artists and creators and everybody, because it gets it to the top of the list for the viewing, and other people that would have had no idea that's available now, if they're looking for, a board game on, a platform that's doing crowdfunding or whatever, this thing's right up there at the top, because it gets hit in that algorithm so hard, it really changes the game on that.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, we appreciate all our backers, but that is a huge point.
Yes.
I wish more people bring up the I just backed thing is huge. That really, really does help. And if I could just get, all 150 people who backed to hit that, I think we'd really be in a good shape. But of course, we appreciate anybody who does anything to share these campaigns, because really, I think that's been the biggest difficulty. Social media is just really clamping down on us, and I can just not get the word out for these books as easily as we used to, and it's been a challenge.
Exactly, and the best way to get this accomplished and everything is the other hashtag that I got, which is Voice of the Indies. The Voice of the Indies is the conglomerate, everybody that's involved in the indies, in the comic industry and everything. And the more people that get involved in this, the louder that voice gets. So get out there, use the power of the finger, use the Voice of the Indies, get that voice out there as much as you possibly can. And let's make sure that we get Drumsticks of Doom and Depowered out there and up on top of its goal. And then we'll start seeing some stretch goals and some other fun stuff coming up, I'm sure, on that end. And there's no telling. I mean, this is such a fun group of books on this. There's no telling where this could possibly go. So we want to see this definitely come alive, but we want to see what happens whenever it gets a jolt of energy into it as well after it's gotten its full life. I'm interested to see that point right there. So I will be paying close attention to this one. But Jon, I certainly appreciate you being on here. It has been an honor having you on the show, being able to talk about your campaign and your work involved in getting this all set up. One last thing that I want to go ahead and put on here is, if anybody wants to have any questions asked, anything like that, you can reach out to Jon and he will be happy to answer any questions regarding the campaign. If you need to get a hold of Jon and you're not sure exactly how, for whatever reason, you can still reach out to me and I will point you in that direction quicker than anything to make sure that you have a chance to get on there. We have just about 2 weeks left on this campaign, and we're going to make sure we finish this thing out as strong as possible, because you can't have a metal book without finishing out louder than everybody else. So that being said, thank you everyone for being here. Certainly appreciate it. Looking forward to having y'all back on the next show. Until next time, keep it indie, y'all.